Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel EV Solar and Kilowatts. This is a very long overdue video. This is going to be our December generation and consumption using our Solar Edge web-based platform. You've seen a couple of my others which I've done. This is overdue because my PC went kaput. It died, had to have a new hard drive installed, which was a real headache. Fortunately, I managed to recover a lot of my files. So for those that haven't watched this channel before, the setup on our house is a 7.5 kilowatt solar array made up of 25 solar panels. They're all JA Solar 310 watt on a southeasterly elevation and 4 panels on a westerly orientation. The panels then go through our Solar Edge inverter, which is has a 5 kilowatts of power, which then gets channeled into the house, onto the various services, or back out to the grid. The other devices that we have, which makes use of the excess solar that we generate, are 2 MyEnergy devices, namely the Eddy. That is a immersion heater facility which takes any excess through the Eddy and into a 3 kilowatts heating element into our hot water cylinder. And then we have the MyEnergy Zappy, which again uses excess solar as well as timed and boost and fast charges, but takes that excess solar or excess energy that's not being used by the house or any of the other devices, and then puts that into the car before any excess then goes back to the grid. So that's what we have. Let's get into it now and have a look at our December results. Okay, so here we have the Solar Edge dashboard. On a web-based dashboard. They also have a mobile phone app as well, which is quite useful. But for the purpose of this exercise, this is a much clearer and better way of doing it. So if you haven't looked at this before, there's quite a lot of information on here, so I'll just run through it briefly for you, just to sort of give you a bit of an overview. We have at the top end here, we're able to look at data per day, per week, month, or billing cycle, and you can change the dates there depending on when you get your bill. So you can make it specific to that period, or you can look at your annual consumption as well. We're going to be looking at month here, which is why I've selected that at the top, and it's from we're looking at when I come down to it in December here and I apply that. We're going to be looking at the 1st of December to the 31st of December 2020. I'll shortly be bringing out the January consumption and generation, etc. Very shortly as well. So December wasn't a fantastic month, but I'll go about that in a short while for you. So along the top here, we've got our system production, which was 184.58 kilowatt hours for the month of December, which is pretty shocking. It was actually ahead of our prediction, so can't fault it. It was better than expected. Then we have our percentage of our system production that we consumed. So we actually consumed 90% of what we generated, which was excellent, and we only had to export 17.6, which was 10% of what we generated. What you're trying to get here, folks, is to export nothing. You get between 3 and 5p for your export, so electricity costs more than that invariably, and I'll talk to you about what tariff we're on and what we swapped onto recently in just a moment. But there's no point in exporting it. It's ultimately going to cost you more by importing it. So you're trying to want to use as much as you can. And one of the devices I mentioned earlier on, which was the MyEnergy Eddy, which will track the excess solar up to 3 kilowatts and pump that into our hot water cylinder, is absolutely fantastic for that. I would say it was our best investment, and I recommend that highly. I can't recommend it enough. Then we've got our total consumption for the month, which looks huge at 887.02 kilowatts. You've got to remember, obviously, that we charge our car with the Zappy, not just through solar, because there really wasn't much in December, but also on boost and time charges. So quite a bit of that is car generation. We can see that daily as we go through it. So we mentioned earlier on that 166.62 was actually generated by our solar, and we consumed that, and then the rest of it was imported, 720.1, which is a lot of kilowatts hits. And then you've got here day by day what your consumption is, what you imported, and what your self-consumption was. So in months like December, when the weather's been pretty poor, you're going to have very big, lots of red and not very much yellow, blue and green. And then you can look at this again, your import and export through the day. You really don't want to see much green in this table. You want to see it all well, not much red, but you won't see much green on that for export, because we don't tend to export very much. And then comparative energy, I'm just starting our kind of second year, if you like. This was installed back in September, so in 20. So we'll have different colors as this progresses. But you can see here in September, and you can see the difference of the generation. It's quite extraordinary, really. In September, we had a cracking month, and you can see October, November, December has all been quite poor, and you'll see there in January, which I'll do in a separate video, very similar, in fact, to December 21, very similar to, sorry, January 21, excuse me, very similar to December 20. Okay, so let's have a look at this day by day then, and let me see if I can just get that over here. Oh, and on the right hand side here, it just tells you the sort of the projected weather and the weather on the current day and what it's projected to be. I haven't found these overly reliable, to be honest, but yeah, they're okay. They're okay. So I'm just going to bring us over onto the 1st of December, just down here, 20. Okay, so just a run through of what this looks like. And actually, 1st of December was a pretty good day. You might hear people talk about base load. This is the load of the house when everyone's asleep or nobody's in it and not using anything. Nothing's kind of operating other than the base units or base consumption units of the house. That is everything that's plugged in on standby and your fridges and freezers. For us, it's around 300 or 400 watts overnight, and that's something that we could cover with a battery potentially, but I can't make battery pay at the moment. It's still too expensive technology, and the time for repayment from that can be as much as 15-20 years, and my solar panels are on about a 6-year payback. So batteries, I don't know, they're not quite there for us yet. So you'll see here, this is our base load, and then this solar production is in green here, and then you can see a lot of blue here. This is the self-consumption. So we were getting sun from around sort of just before 8 o'clock in the morning, and it ramped all the way up to almost like just over 4.5 kilowatts worth of power. And then as the day progressed and the sun moved around, it dipped down to just a few 100 watts here, and the very late part of the afternoon at around 4 o'clock. This is before the winter solstice, so we're still getting towards the shorter days. We're now in the sort of spring equinox, and things are getting a bit brighter. So you'd expect in the summer for this band here to be much wider. And this is not a bad curve. Really what you want to see is a nice big bell curve here. You can see where it goes up and down, because of course the sun's going in and out of cloud, etc. But not a bad day at all. The reason you're seeing a lot of self-consumption and it's tracking the actual solar generation is because that's our My Energy eddy, which is tracking the excess solar that would normally be pumped back to the grid, and it's putting it in a hot water cylinder. And you can see here it's going up to about 3.5K here, and then anything over that then obviously is ultimately could potentially be going back to the grid. And then all the red here is everything that we're consuming. Now at this time here we were on the Octopus Energy Agile tariff. I'll put a link in the bottom if you are thinking about moving on to Octopus, whether it be on their Agile or Go. More of that a little bit later. Then if you use my link and you haven't got a link, if you use mine, rather than just going in green and getting I think £20 for joining, you get £50, and I get £50 too, which really helps me obviously. The peaks on the day here you see around 8K. That's usually a bit of car charging, or at night time when it's cheap we will tend to use some of our appliances. Okay, so moving on to the next day, you can see just how things change and how quickly things change. This is our solar production for the following day. I mean, it's 7/10 of NAF really. 2.41 kilowatts. We're still consuming 99%, and generally seeing, unless we're out of the house, we end up consuming most of what we produce, which is fantastic really, which is another reason why battery doesn't quite work for us, because very small percentages here are actually going exported back to the grid. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, these peaks here again are usually appliances. Now with the Octopus Agile tariff, it gets very expensive between sort of 4 and 7 o'clock, so we tend not to use too much here. So you can see our load's quite low, and outside of these times we get some peaks of appliances. Over to what you also get on Agile is plunging, and I show you an example of that. I think on the 28th of December we had it. We also had free electricity given to us on the 25th of December, which was quite cool. They gave us 4 hours free, so everyone was melting their fuses to try and get back some free energy. I think we got about 70 or 80p or something, which it's not a lot, but it's better than nothing, isn't it? Yeah, so again, I mean, this is an appalling day. There's like no point having panels here at all this day. So yeah, we produced, didn't even give us a bar chart. Look, 577 watts. Not even a self-consumption was 0.58 kilowatts. So basically everything that we produced, we obviously used. And again, big peaks here of around 3-4 o'clock in the morning, where the car was just sort of topping up. Okay, so moving on to the next day, what else can I tell you here? Again, some poor days, a couple of little peaks here. Just out of interest, for worthy of note here, the scale on the left here changes depending on how much you're generating. So if you are getting peaks of generation around 5k or exports around 6, 7, 8k, then you'll see the scale on the left-hand side is going to be changing here. So moving on then, not a terrible day today, but certainly an example of how the solar panels respond to the varying lights that from the sun, or the ambient sort of sun. Even if the sun's behind the cloud, as long as there are lumens, I guess is how you measure light, as long as there's enough lumens, your panels will generate. Not as much as direct sunlight, because of course a lot of it gets filtered out and scattered by the cloud and the water particles within the cloud, and then some of it get reflected back up to the atmosphere. That's the problem with cloud, but a lot of it still comes through, that radiation still comes through, and you'll still get solar, which is why it's really important to maximize your solar panels. Get as many on there as you can afford, because it's the poor days that you're trying to deal with. Anything can generate good electricity on a sunny day, even if it's north facing, but it's the bad days, which is really what we get here in the UK. I suspect on a day like today, had we not had 25 panels on our roof and we only had the sort of standard 10 for a 4 kilowatt system, then I dare say we would struggle to make 2 or 3 kilowatts. So we basically means that even on the dullest days, we can usually cover our base load, which we wouldn't do otherwise. So moving on to the next day then, over the 5th of December, not sure there's a great deal to talk about here. Very similar pattern over the few days here. And yeah, again, you can see here just before 4 o'clock, quite a lot of consumption, high consumption. That's because the oven's on and we're cooking dinner. My children come home from school, when they are at school, at around 3:30. They're usually very hungry, and my wife then goes to work normally at 5. So 4 o'clock is actually a good time for us to eat, and it's also before the energy prices peak on the Agile tariff, and they go up as high as 35 pence. That's where it's capped. So you really don't want to be using your energy then. Then we move on to the 7th, so we're still within the first week, and you can see how much it varies. This is a pretty short period again, because it's winter, but I mean we're getting up towards 4k here, so 3.5 we've pretty much used everything, and we've then got the excess solar there going back to the grid, but not much. 98%, 10 kilowatts produced, and only 2% going back to the grid. So I keep talking about the eddy because it is a fantastic bit of kit. It really is. 3 kilowatts, not an awful lot, 98%, and then 0.6 back. And of course, consumption here of around 24 kilowatts. If I'm using anything over 15 kilowatts, that's typically because we're car charging. And this is an example here of the car charging of various appliances going on. Just here we have a poor day at 4 kilowatts, and again more charging sort of overnight, and then sort of base load here otherwise at around sort of 400 watts. Over onto the 12th, a real peaky day this one, but again not much production. The 3 kilowatts is the highest on the what do you call it, the X axis here? Is this X and Y? I can't remember. Anyway, on this axis here, it's down to 3, so not producing an awful lot. 6 kilowatts, 21 kilowatts is our consumption. But again, we're consuming 96% of what we produce on that day. Again, that's all down to the eddy. If my solar isn't producing more than 3 kilowatts, then I'm getting 99-100% of what we're producing. There you go, 100%, nothing back to the grid, because my eddy is taking up everything it's giving out up to 3 kilowatts, which is fantastic. I love my eddy. I love it. Best thing we ever bought. Okay, so yeah. Oh, by the way, solar iBoost. That's another hot water. I have no experience of it myself, but I know people do, and I see people on YouTube with it. It does a similar job, but I think the My Energy Eddy is much more intuitive, much more user-friendly. There are lots of options you can use it, and of course it ties in with other things. So yeah, it's more expensive, but it's a very smart bit of kit. Okay, so yeah, all right, just shy of 6 kilowatts here, 97 produced, and we banged a little bit out there to the back to the grid. It's difficult to take everything. If you haven't got batteries, you're not going to get everything, because you can't just be standing there waiting for the sun to come from behind a cloud and go and throw your washing machine on, because within the next minute it's going back behind the cloud again. So you can't do that. You got to have a life at the end of the day. And you are being paid for what you export, so it's not the end of the world. Quite a lot of export here at 32%. So I think on this day here, perhaps we were out, or not many people wanted to have a shower. Got teenagers, by the way, or basically the hot water had heated up overnight, and it got what it needed. So quite a bit of export there. I suppose you can plan. If you know the next day is going to be really sunny, then just leave your hot water off and let the eddy do it for you. That requires planning, of course. 100% used here at 1.7, but yeah, high peaks here at 7 kilowatts, 30 kilowatts consumption. I need the car to go to work. I've got a 100-mile round trip, and so it needs to be charged up. And there you go. There's a big block here, so lots was going on between sort of midnight and about 4:30 in the morning. So I suspect what happened on that day, on the 17th, is it was below 3 pence, and so I got pretty much everything on that night, including tumble dryers, etc. And then between 8 and 4 again, this is a nice kind of an attempt to a bell curve here. The sun's coming up completely uninterrupted, and then it's kind of low in the sky. It's peaking here about 3.5 kilowatts for us, and then a few sort of pops behind cloud, and then it gets overcast for the rest of the day, or overcast then as it comes towards the end of the day. So you can see here that the eddy's pretty much full, but essentially here we've almost got a nice bell curve here if we join these gaps up. That's kind of what you're looking for. And we exported 2.8 there, and we used about 82%. So again, nice sunny day, and the eddy had pretty much done its job. Pretty poor day then for the next day, 638 or 6.64. We've obviously used everything that we generated as you would expect. Yeah, again, a little bit of excess going back to the grid here, so not really my top performance, 59%. So yeah, I mean, we're not really going anywhere, but we had a lot of car charging here overnight, 45 kilowatts worth of consumption. On the 20th, and getting towards Christmas now, this is quite a nice chart, really, isn't it? All the colours there in the rainbow. I've obviously realised it's quite a nice sunny day, and I've tried to sort of flick everything on to try and maximise it, and maybe even perhaps even the Zappy was getting involved then as well in trying to get the consumption. But 87% consumed is not bad for a bit of an odd fiddly day like that. Yeah, so low consumption day, this axis here, 2 kilowatts, and not much solar generation here, 1.45 kilowatts, which is basically, enough to power your light bulb, your lighting for the day. But anyway, no export and 100%. It's obviously a bit more than that, but I joke. And a similar day the following day. Get towards the 23rd, not a lot of difference there. 24th, this is Christmas Eve. This is a nice bell curve, and it's a shame that this axis goes all the way up to over 10. So goodness knows what we were doing here, charging everything, I suspect, because we consumed 45 kilowatts. But my consumption has completely dwarfed the solar generation, which would have been a really nice day by the look of things. A nice bell curve here, apart from these little clips here. But yeah, really nice. Generating up to 4 kilowatts. So the sun's a lot lower in the sky this time of year, so you don't tend to get your maximum generation even on the sunniest of days, simply because I guess primarily because the sun is very low in the sky. We've got a little bit of shading on our panels on one of the gables that come out over our roof, but yeah, other than that, the sun's low in the sky and we're southeast and west facing, so it's not optimal. But in the summertime, when the sun's high in the sky, from 8 o'clock in the morning, we're producing 5 kilowatts. And in fact, we're capped and we're clipped basically, because our inverter only powers 5 kilowatts of whatever we produce of the 7.5. Good. Okay, so here we are on the 25th, and so they gave us free energy from 8 o'clock till 12 o'clock. So you can see here we basically put a load of stuff on. We started getting some cooking done, but we didn't actually do the majority of our cooking until late in the afternoon, as you can see here. Yeah, we ended up paying for it there because we went into the more expensive time of the day. But hey ho, it's Christmas Day. Who cares? I wasn't too fussed about it. But also, it was a sunny day, so even though we had everything on, we actually self-consumed 14 kilowatts. Had this not been a very sunny day, then perhaps we might have been able to get a little bit more back in terms of free energy. 26th, not a lot to write home about, and then I think the 27th was a plunge period. So yeah, it was a very windy Boxing Day, I think, or the subsequent day on the 27th. And between sort of midnight and 8 o'clock in the morning, the price went negative. It's up to about 6 pence per kilowatt. So we consumed 52 kilowatts. The large part of that was in this period here, and yeah, we got, like I say, about 70 or 80p back. Some people got 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds back, because that depends on what you're doing. These are probably high energy users in the first place. And then we got the 28th, 29th, and then the 30th, and I think that's probably it on the 31st. So yeah, not a fantastic day, not a fantastic month, I should say, but you've got a good overview there of how your system might perform in a winter month, and perhaps how to get the most out of it. We didn't do, nobody does very well in the winter months, and there's not much you can do about it really, apart from just kind of use as much as you can. And if you can and you're able to get either an eddy or an iBoost, you'll certainly make sure you'll maximize all of your solar production. Well, I hope that's helped. Thanks very much for watching. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, because that really helps me. Press the like button and the bell notification if you want to see or be notified of any upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.